Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest, absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. Today, we will continue to explain how to identify and use herbs that you find in the wild. We'll talk about a couple of plant families. But before I get into that, boy, I tell you, if you've watched the news at all this week, it just seems like everything's falling apart. In some places, like Haiti and Afghanistan, yeah, it really is. Haiti has always been awful, and Afghanistan's pretty much always been awful. And with earthquakes in Haiti and the Taliban taking over Afghanistan today, once again, these people are in extreme peril. And I guess all we can really do, I mean, there are aid agencies in Haiti, and a priest I know is very closely trying to feed the people there that are starving, basically because of uh, generations of bad government and constant hurricanes, and now they've got an earthquake on their hands. And as far as Afghanistan, really all we can do is say prayers, and it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for those people. There have also been a lot of stories that seem really scary about the virus, right? COVID. I think we should talk about that as herbalists, as people who are seeking an alternative to, say, the mainstream Western way of treating and viewing disease and interacting with our own health. I did a show a couple months ago, and it's really proven to be one of my most popular. It's called Two Visions for Your Future. And I lay it out, and I absolutely recommend you listen to that show. If you listen to that show, you know my philosophy and you know what to expect in my podcast and in my videos and articles. Okay, we could call it self sufficiency, we could call it independence. The way I was raised, mother, my grandparents, my great grandparents, my great aunts and uncles, all of these people, and especially my grandfather, were incredibly resilient, self sufficient people. They weren't the kind of people to, oh, sit there and watch a hurricane come in, stand on the roof and expect somebody to come rescue them. Okay? They were proactive, take action people. And the way I was raised was to believe that whether anyone ever said it to me specifically or not, the difference between being a child and an adult, or being a boy and being a man, was learning the skills to take care of yourself and your family. To me, that's still common sense. And honestly, I can't understand why anyone would embrace a mindset opposed to that, a mindset of dependence. I often jokingly say that people begin to give up their freedom when they let other people take their trash off. Okay, growing up in the country as I did, our trash was our responsibility. That's the way I grew up. You take care of your own trash. Well, you know, there are a whole lot of people that have no experience with that. To them, trash goes in a can and someone comes around a truck and picks it up, and you pay your taxes to do that. And it's a nice trade-off. I mean, I don't say anyone has to take care of their own trash any more than I say someone has to take charge of their own health. There are a lot of people that are very satisfied with our modern healthcare system. They think it's the wonder of the world. I don't. I say it's good for what it is. If I had a heart attack or broke a leg, I'd certainly be going to the hospital. But medical error and malpractices and overprescription, if you put those together, is the leading cause of death in the United States. The more you go to a doctor, the more likely you are to be sick and diseased and die. Every member of my family who's passed away in the last 20, 25 years has died due to medical error, malpractice, or outright medical abuse, purposeful abuse by medical care professionals. Not in any way trying to besmirch the profession. There are wonderful, dedicated people that go into the healthcare profession with an altruistic goal of helping people. There are also highly intelligent people that love solving problems and they make great diagnosticians or they make great surgeons. Um, I don't think that's who you run into. I don't think that's who you encounter most often. Okay. Part of being an herbalist is learning to treat yourself and your family and your circle. And that's very different than walking into a doctor's office and he reads the report, that you either filled out or a nurse asks you some questions coming in. He diagnoses you in 5 minutes, gives you a prescription, and he's out the door in 10 because he works for a healthcare corporation that doesn't want him to take more than 11 minutes with each patient. In that situation, he does not want you asking questions. He does not want to sit there and talk with you about your illness. You are facts and figures, and here's a prescription, and he's out the door. Then you come back because you've had a problem with that medication, and he says, okay, you had a bad reaction. Here's another medication. He's out the door. Sometimes they say, well, if you don't like my diagnosis, get a second opinion. Well, if that second opinion doesn't agree with what the first doctor said, trust me, you don't need to be going back to that first doctor because he's going to see you as a problem for the rest of your life. They're going to be talking about you. There are going to be notes put in your file. I've seen it happen. I have seen, I have sat in a waiting room in one of the few times I went to a doctor in the last 25 years or so. I had an appointment at, I think it was about 11 a.m., and I had to get to work. And I sat there, and people kept coming in, being seen before me, and being seen before me. And then I see the doctor leave, and he goes to lunch. He's gone for a while. I'm still sitting there 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I've had to call into work and cancel. Tell him I'm tied up at the doctor's office. Doctor comes back dressed in his golf clothes, goes in and changes, starts seeing patients again. And, I didn't have very nice words to say about that doctor to his nurse or to his face. And trust me, I didn't go back to that doctor again because I knew if I did, there was going to be retribution. They don't want you to question them. Well, how is that relevant to the news? Well, what have we been hearing about COVID? It's on the rise again, right? It's an epidemic. Who knows what they're going to do? And they, meaning the federal governments or your state government. Are they going to mandate masks? Are they going to mandate vaccines? How will they do that? I don't know. Will they do it? I don't know. Look, if you want to wear a mask, fine. This is a free country and that's your decision. Meanwhile, there is not a single scientific study, peer-reviewed, empirical, the way things are supposed to be, that shows any efficacy of cloth or paper masks to help to stop spread of virus. But Dr. Fauci says, if you question me, you question the science. First of all, science is meant to be questioned. That's the scientific method. Experimentation, questioning. You are supposed to question science. But secondly, he has no science to back up his recommendation to wear a mask. In fact, when this whole thing started, he said the masks weren't useful, may even cause more problem than they solve. Some of us have memories to remember that. Some of us aren't so caught up in the 24/7 news cycle that we don't know what's going on from day to day. As far as the vaccine, again, it's a free country. You can choose to get vaccinated or not. All right, here's the numbers. About 70% of the population's been vaccinated. About 15% of the population has probably had COVID, whether they were diagnosed or not. That means you walk into any given situation, and if we were to believe what we're told, about 85% of those people can't give you COVID. They've either been vaccinated or they've already had it. That's how viruses work. That's herd immunity. That's why we're supposed to get vaccinated, if you believe in that kind of thing. Somehow, people who've been vaccinated keep getting COVID. Kind of makes me wonder, okay, I'm not supposed to question about getting vaccinated. I have strong moral objections to a vaccine made with aborted fetal cells. Okay? That's my right not to take it. I've already had COVID. I had it last January. Again, my decision, my right. But they want to mandate this vaccine. They're now saying Biden said last week, and Biden says a lot of crazy stuff, but he said last week they were going to limit interstate travel. It means traveling between states in the United States, you would have to show proof of COVID vaccine. Wow, that sounds crazy, right? Well, actually, some states did that last year during the big COVID lockdown. They're saying, you could lose your job if you don't get vaccinated. Your kid couldn't go to school if you don't get vaccinated. Some people are even saying that if it's a possibility that they would say you can't enter any place of business without having a vaccine. Okay, well, yeah, they're actually already doing that in San Francisco and New York and I think Philadelphia, maybe New Orleans, to varying extents, right? Well, it could actually get to the point where you couldn't go into the store, you had to call to pick up, but they won't bring the groceries to your car unless you show them proof of vaccination. Yeah, that's inhumane, right? People are going to starve because they choose not to get a vaccine. Well, okay, look what's happening in Australia. Look what's happening in France, Canada to some extent. The governments are not exactly treating people very humanely. I mean, yeah, it's not as bad as China, where they were welding people in their apartments and leaving them to die, but it's not exactly the liberty we've always known about. My point is not to freak you out. My point is actually to calm you down. Remember, I just told you, you shouldn't be able, if we trust the science, you shouldn't be able to catch a virus from people who have already had it or have been vaccinated. So if about 85% of the population falls into that, you walk into a room of 100 people and there are only about 15 to 20 that are questionable. That's reasonable. You keep a little distance from people. You look out for people who have symptoms because you can only transmit a virus when you're symptomatic. Okay? Asymptomatic people cannot transmit a virus. So if you see someone who looks sick, if they're wheezing, if they're coughing, if they're pale, if they're flushed, if they're sweating, if they're obviously running a fever, stay away from them. Maybe advise them from a distance to go get medical help. That's common sense. That's how the human race has survived for millions of years. So, but that's not at all what we're being told on the news. This is so frustrating. I'm driving down the road, heading through, I think, Yadkinville, North Carolina, and I hear a radio announcement. Breaking news, this just in. I don't remember if it was the CDC or if it was a state health agency. But anyway, health officials tell us that 400 out of every 100,000 people now has COVID or the Delta variant, I think they called it. Makes it sound even more scary. And you're like, 400 out of 100,000 people. That sounds terrifying. Um, Frankly, that is blatant propaganda based on the knowledge that the American people, having gone through public education system, in which most people aren't taught to do basic math, can't simplify those numbers down to a coherent equation. 400 out of every 100,000 people. You remember how to do this, like in elementary school? We learned how to find these, ratios and fractions. You just start knocking off some zeros. Or you can be complicated, divide one number into the other, then multiply it by 100. Basically, just take off the duplicated zeros, and we're left with 0.4%. Think about that, y'all. 0.4% are actively infected. That means 4 tenths of 1%. So remember that room of 100 people we already said about, say, 85 of them we can't catch COVID from? There's actually only 4 tenths of 1% in that room. Okay. That means you basically have, you certainly are more likely to die in a car accident going to the grocery store where those 100 people were than to actually encounter someone with COVID to get the virus. Now, I'm not trying to minimize it or play it down, but this is certainly not a hair on fire, run screaming situation, lock people in their homes, set up divisions between states, shut down the economy situation. But if you listen to the news, they keep saying it is. In fact, after that news report, there's some hysterical woman just crying about how children are in such danger. The number of children under the age of like 12 that have had COVID over the past, we're almost on 2 years now, is negligible. Tens of thousands of children have died from all kinds of accidents, illnesses. I mean, you name it, cancer, regular old flu. And just very few health compromised children have even gotten it. And the fraction of them that have died is like hardly anything. And even among adults, this virus has a mortality rate of I think less than 2%. I mean, like 98% of people who get it survive. And I think the number's even a little higher than that. This is no reason to freak out. I don't know the motivation behind trying to scare the hell out of the American people. I can guess. Well, I have a lot of good guesses. I'm not going to get into that right now. Frankly, I think the original motive was to get Biden elected. Yeah, I think that was the original motive to scare people. Now, why are they doing it? I don't know. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a real disease, and I'm not denying it. I'm not saying you shouldn't get a vaccine or wear a face mask if that's what you want. Go for it. It's a free country. Let's just keep our heads and keep it that way. Look, I mean, it's kind of funny to think about it. You know who Anthony Fauci reminds me of? One of my favorite movies of all time. Of course, I love just about a movie Mel Brooks did. There's a couple of them that weren't so great. Uh, First movie I ever saw in the theaters when I was a kid was Spaceballs. Remember yogurt? Mel Brooks playing Yoda, basically. Tony Fauci. And what did we find out about the great and powerful yogurt? He was not the all knowing, all seeing giant sitting in a cave with his little servants. He was a pathetic little guy that had no clue what was going on. Yeah, he could, he could do a little magic and such, and you know, but it's merchandising. That's where the real money is. Merchandising. Who's making all these masks? All these masks that are now filling our oceans and just really wreaking havoc on our environment. Hmm, where's all that money going? Maybe a little coincidence that the Chinese economy was in recession before the virus, and now they are have more millionaires than they've ever had, thanks to manufacturing most of our pharmaceuticals and medical equipment. I don't know. Who could? Yeah, I won't get into that. Don't want to be called a crazy conspiracy theorist. But we have to question. If you're going to be an herbalist, you have to question. But we're told we cannot question the government. We cannot, absolutely cannot question Tony Fauci. But, what did Thomas Jefferson say? Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. So question with boldness even the existence of God. I think I might be questioning the science too, because Tony Fauci may be a brilliant guy. Hey, he may prove me wrong and be a brilliant guy, but he's no God. All right, let's get into some plants, y'all. Let's start with the Tiliaceae, the Basswood family. Now, this is one of the most common herbs used in Europe, where they're going to call it a lime tree. Like lime is in fruit, but it's not a citrus tree. It's actually a basswood tree. That causes a lot of confusion between American and European herbalists, by the way. The Tiliaceae, or basswood family. The members of the basswood family are mostly trees and shrubs with simple, alternate leaves, but there are some smaller plants in the family, including jute, which is interesting. Jute twine. You would not even think this was in the family of a tree. The flowers are regular and bisexual. There are usually five, sometimes three or four sepals, separate or sometimes joined to the base with an equal number of petals, plus numerous stamens. The ovary is positioned superior and consists of 2 to 10 united carpels, with partition walls present forming an equal number of chambers. It matures as a berry, capsule, or sometimes a schizocarp, meaning a dry fruit that splits apart into one-seeded sections. And again, I'm reading from Thomas J. Elpel's Botany in a Day. Um, it's an excellent book, and I highly recommend it. So let's talk about how we would identify the various members of the basswood family and what they're used for. So let's start with the weird one, jute. A few species of jute have been used commercially for their fibers. These and others have been cultivated in gardens for use as a pot herb. Medicinally, jute greens function as a digestive stimulant. The seeds of some species may contain a cardiac glycoside. So you need to be a little careful with jute if you're eating the seeds. Um, I don't know of any reason why you would eat the seeds unless it was a survival situation, but bear that in mind. Now, Tilia. Now, this is the basswood or linden tree. By far, this is the one that's most common in America. Tilia americana. This is the one you're going to see, and this is the one you're really going to use for herbal medicine. Now, basswood has what you would call a cordate leaf. It's heart-shaped. It has a nice sharp point at the end. It has little serrated teeth all on the edges of the leaf. And the stem that forms the berries usually have maybe three of these little berries hanging on there. Usually the flowers of the basswood tree that are used medicinally. And in some places, they're called bee trees. And it's because when the basswood tree is in bloom, any bees swarm in the area will flock to that tree. Basswood honey is considered to be some of the very best honey. It's right up there with sourwood and tupelo, and some people say it's even better. So one way you can find a basswood tree in the woods in the springtime, before you can smell it, and it does have a wonderful smell, you should be able to hear the bees on it. And there's a story in one of Yule Given's books where he says how he was an Amish kid taught him that, like a little kid, he was wandering around the woods in Pennsylvania with looking for herbs, and the kid showed him how to find a basswood tree by his ears as well as his nose and his eyes. So that's a real good tip actually. Linden trees are native to the eastern forests, but are sometimes planted domestically. Reportedly, the fruit and flower of the linden tree can be ground together to produce a chocolate flavor. There were attempts long ago to commercialize the chocolate substitute, but it was too perishable for shipping and storage. That's I have never encountered anyone who tried to do that was actually successful. Apparently, carob, which is another tree, carob tastes a whole lot more like chocolate than basswood leaves and flowers. But if it can be done, I just haven't seen it yet. I would be very curious to see it. I know the flowers are often made into fritters and fried. People make teas, of course. Jams and jellies can be flavored with it, and the flowers have all kinds of useful um, edible values, and I suppose the leaves do as well. But no one I've ever spoken with has successfully made anything out of it that tastes like chocolate. Just wanted to put that out there. But hey, if you go for it, give it a try. Let me know if you're successful. The tree may be tapped for syrup. The young leaves are somewhat mucilaginous and edible raw. The flowers are also edible. Caution is to be advised as narcotics may develop in older flowers. And again, that is disputed. The lime tree, especially in Europe, is used to make tisane. Tisane, well, if you ever watched any of the, or read any of the Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie books, or watched the show, that's the beverage he's always sipping on. It's a tea made of various herbs, but among the most popular is linden or lime. And it's just a nice, pleasant, calming, relaxing drink. Now, according to the herbalist Michael Moore, he did not find that any of the American basswood flowers had were sedative enough, I guess you would say, to have a narcotic effect, but that some in Mexico and South America, when very fresh, had that quality. So that's actually the opposite of what's being said here, that the older flowers have that quality. He found that the fresher they were, the more of the narcotic type quality they had. Um, let's see, medicinally, a tea of the inner bark is soothing for burns. A tea of the dried flowers is expectorant, sedative, and diaphoretic in effect. So expectorant, it brings up mucus. Sedative, it's relaxing, may even help with sleep. And diaphoretic means it helps with fevers. Linden provides quality cordage material, long strips of the bark cut from the tree. And let's see, the other one that grows in the United States is Rheum feta or burrweed. Grows in Florida. I don't know much about it. Apparently, Mr. Elpold didn't either when he wrote this book because he doesn't say anything more than. So this is a very popular herb used in Europe, and interestingly, in the book Jolanta Witteb and I recently published, "The Herbs and Weeds of Father Johann Kunzel," in her commentary, she got really more into the European use of the lime tree or linden, and I think this would be interesting for me to read. It's just a brief section. She says, while Father Kunzel did not mention lime tree in his book, I definitely want to say many good words about this precious tree. This was the first wild leaf I ate in my life. We had a very good nursery teacher, and she showed us the young lime leaves in the spring. I think I was 3 years old, and I still remember when we tried the leaves for the first time and how soft, mild, and delicious they were. It makes me think of the importance of introducing plants to very young children. The smaller the better, and not only the edible plants, but also the dangerous, the poisonous ones, so that the child knows and distinguishes them. When I run my workshops, I always encourage mothers to bring their children. Well, they are really interested in the plant world, sometimes even more than their mothers. And the scent of lime blossoms, it is definitely the best scent in the world for me. When I was younger and when I still believed in buying perfumes, I was looking for this scent. No, they said it is not possible to conserve the natural scent of lime blossoms. I am looking for blossoming lime trees every early summer, and then I did not only collect the flowers, but inhale this wonderful scent. The lime blossoms are in all my mixtures for cold and flu. If one is ill, one sweats a lot after drinking lime blossom tea. If one is healthy, one would not sweat. The leaves have a mucus which soothes the pain of a sore throat. I simply chew the leaves and let the mucus cover my throat. The leaves used to be very important to Germanic peoples. It would grow in a village square. It was a place for important meetings, village courts, gatherings of young people, and first kisses. So that is how lime is viewed in German folk medicine. And there are actually some really interesting legends about lime trees, and they were very, very important in Central Europe and really the center of a village. And I just really thought Jolanta's segment on the lime tree or the linen tree, it's refreshing. It reminds us of the simple pleasures of the natural world. And really, it is very important to teach wild plants to children. The only reason I'm doing this now is because I was taught wild plants by my mother and my grandparents and the Hicks family of Beech Mountain when I was a little bit older. And honestly, if teachers were teaching, especially younger children about the natural world more than what they're being taught in schools, I think, wow, this world would be a whole lot better place. At least this country would. So now let's get into another plant. And this one I've mentioned before in some of the videos I've done. It is such an overlooked and useful plant. And I think if you were only going to plant a few herbs in your garden, you would never want to leave out members of the violet family. Violets are so incredibly useful. They're edible, they're medicinal, and they're also just really easy to identify. Um, they have irregular flowers. You'll usually see two petals on top and three on the bottom. The flowers have 5 separate petals, and usually, they're going to be blue or they're going to be violet, or like with Johnny Jump Ups, they're going to be, it's like violet purple with yellow on the inside and just, really showy and pretty. And the little wood violets that, grow on the woods, they're plentiful. You make salads out of them or just snack on them. Some people like to make candied violet flowers. It's really quite tasty. According to Mr. Elpel, the violet family, or Violaceae, violets have a distinctive, slightly irregular flower. The pansy and Johnny Jump Ups are members of the violet genus. If you have seen them, you will recognize other flowers of this group. Botanically, the violets are a perennial plant with simple leaves, either alternate or basal. Basal means they grow from the base. The nodding flowers have 5 sepals and 5 petals, with the lower petal being larger than the side and top petal. I never actually noticed that, but yeah, he's right. The lowest petal is larger than the others. Huh. 5 stamens alternate with the petals. The ovary is positioned superior and consists of 3 united carpels, forming a single chamber. It matures as an explosive 3-valved capsule. Now, what that means is usually if you brush past it, it'll pop like a touch-me-not. That's how they send out their seeds into the wind. So the key words of this family are slightly irregular, pansy-like flowers. I think everyone knows what a violet looks like. If you don't, just pull up a picture real quick, and you'll know it's a violet. Violets are pretty common in most areas that are not too arid, and even there they're probably going to be planted ornamentally. All of our species of viola are edible as a salad green or pot herb. Some are better than others. Violets make an excellent tea. They are high in vitamins A and C. As a child, I collected blue violets with my grandmother every summer. We dried them for winter teas, and it's still one of my favorites. Violet leaves contain varying amounts of saponin. Medicinally, they are diuretic, expectorant, alterative, and mildly laxative. All right, you probably know all those words except alterative. Alterative is sort of like tonic. It means it gradually and subtly brings you into a state of health. The yellow violets are more laxative than others. Violets are sometimes used in cancer cases as blood purifiers to aid the liver in eliminating waste from the blood. So there is no junk to feed the cancer cells. Blood purifiers that's a term that herbalists use that doctors hate because how can you purify the blood? Um, but like he said, it helps the liver eliminate waste from the blood. And sometimes we also use lymphatics for the same purpose, for a similar purpose. And they might be called blood purifiers as well, such as poke salad, poke greens, or poke root is a lymphatic. It flushes toxins out of the lymph system. Well, the old timers would have called that a blood cleanser as well, or blood purifier, or a spring tonic. Violets are mildly astringent as well as mucilaginous and thus are useful for treating ulcers. The roots of some species contain saponin alkaloids useful for expectorant and emetic properties. Well, I think that kind of is giving violets short shrift, as we say. Violets have so many wonderful properties. For instance, Father Kunzel again said that sweet violet, that's Viola odorata, is a wonderful remedy for whooping cough. Violet is also very good for fevers and strengthening the lungs. Violets contain salicin, much like willow. That's the precursor to aspirin. So violets can help lower fevers and help with aches and pains, just the same as willow or meadowsweet or aspirin if you want to take the pharmaceutical version. Now, Miss Greaves, in her A Modern Herbal, written in 1931, which is basically a summation of the entirety of the British herbal tradition up to that point, she wrote a great deal on violet. Really, her book is so good. I always recommend Miss Greaves' A Modern Herbal. But when she talks about the medicinal uses and actions, says the violet is still to be found in the pharmacopoeias. Well, at that point, 1931, we weren't using synthetics to the exclusion of natural medicinal plants. Now, our medical establishment insists on synthetic drugs made in test tubes. um, for no real valid reason except herbs cost less. Sometimes the herb is more effective than the pharmaceutical, but the herb is free and the pharmaceutical is under a patent, and a whole lot of people make a whole lot of money off of it. So she says that violet flowers possess a slightly laxative property. The best form of administration is the syrup of violets. Syrup of violae of the British Pharmacopoeia directs that it may be given as laxative to infants in doses of 1/2 to 1 teaspoonful or more with an equal volume of oil of almonds. Syrup of violets is also employed as a laxative and as a coloring agent and flavoring for other neutral or acid medicine. The older writers had great faith in syrup of violets, using it for ague, that's fevers, epilepsy, inflammation of the eyes, sleeplessness, pleurisy, jaundice, and quinsy are only a few of the ailments for which it was held potent. Gerard, who was an herbalist who wrote in the 1500s, said, "It has the power to ease inflammation, roughness of the throat, and comforteth the heart, assuageth the pain of the head, and causeth sleep." The flowers are crystallized as an active sweetmeat. Remember, I told you you could candy them and make candied violet flowers. Well, in the old British way of saying that's a sweetmeat. In the days of Charles II, a favorite conserve, that means a jam, essentially, you made a jam or a jelly of violets. Violet sugar, named then violet plate, prepared from the flowers, was considered of excellent use in consumption and was sold by all apothecaries. The flowers have undoubted expectorant qualities. The fresh flowers have also been used as addition in salads, and they have a laxative effect. An infusion of the flowers is employed, especially on the continent, Europe, as a substitute for litmus and in testing acids and alkaloids. One thing you'll notice with all the British writers is they always talk a lot about laxatives. You know, the old traditional English diet, every vegetable was cooked, boiled down to mush, and there was not a whole lot of fiber consumed. Of the leaves, Gerard tells us that they are used as a cooling plaster and comfortable cataplasms or poultices. Culpeper says it is a fine and pleasing plant of Venus. Culpeper always had to have a little astrological reference in there. It is of a mild nature and no way hurtful. All the violets are cold and moist, and while they are fresh and green, are used to cool any heat or distemperature in the body, either inwardly or outwardly, as the inflammation of the eyes, to drink the decoction of the leaves and flowers made with water or wine, or to apply them as a poultice wise to grieved places. It likewise easeth pain in the head caused through want of sleep, or any pains arising from the heart, if applied in the same manner, or with oil of roses. A drachm weight of the dried leaves of the flowers of violets, but the leaves more strongly, doth purge the body of choleric humours, and assuageth the heat if taken in a draught of wine or other drink. The powder of the purple leaves, or the flowers, only picked and dried and drank with water, helps the quinsy and the falling sickness in children. That's epilepsy, actually, especially at the beginning of the disease. It is also good for jaundice. The flowers of the violets ripen and dissolve swellings. The herb or flower, while taken when they are fresh, or flowers that are dry, are effectual in the pleurisy and all diseases of the lungs. The green leaves are used with all other herbs to make plasters and poultices for inflammation and swellings, and to ease all pains whatsoever arising from the heat, and for piles. That's hemorrhoids. For being fried with the yolk of an egg and applied thereto. I'm not sure if I'd want to apply fried eggs to hemorrhoids, but apparently that was a popular herbal treatment in the 1600s. The underground stems and rhizomes, the so-called roots, are strongly emetic and purgative. They have occasionally been used as adulterants to more costly drugs, notably to epiquana, which was epicac, makes you throw up. The seeds are purgative and diuretic and have been used in urinary complaints and are considered a good corrective of gravel. Again, that would be kidney stones or bladder stones. A modern homeopathic medical tincture is made from the whole fresh plant with proof spirit and is considered useful for spasmodic cough with hard breathing and also for rheumatism of the wrists. The glucosidal properties contained in the leaves have not yet been fully investigated, but would appear to have distinctive antiseptic properties. That's a very old use for violets is putting them on wounds, the leaf poultice. And you remember Culpeper said they were good for the eyes. St. Hildegard von Bingen recommended violets placed over the eyes as you sleep to help with cataracts. She believed it was a very good herb for the eyes. Of late years, preparation of the fresh violet leaves has been used both internally and externally on the treatment of cancer. And though the British Pharmacopoeia does not uphold the treatment, it specifies how they are employed. From other sources, it is stated that the violet leaves have been used with benefit to allay the pain in cancerous growths, especially of the throat, which no other treatment relieved, and several reputed cures have been recorded. An infusion of the leaves in boiled water has been administered in doses of 1 to 2 fluid ounces. A syrup of the petals and a liquid extract of the fresh leaves are also used, the latter taken in teaspoonful doses or rubbed in locally. The fresh leaves are also prepared as a compress for local applications. And she goes on and on about the various uses of violet, especially is in regards to how it was used to treat various cancers. And so I won't get into that. I'm always very hesitant to make any recommendation in regard to cancer, especially when it's old information. So again, that is A Modern Herbal by Miss Maud Greaves, published in 1931. Highly recommend that one for your shelf, as highly recommend growing violets and any of the violet families. They can be so pretty. If you're foolish enough to live in a subdivision and you have POAs and all that, hey, I won't get into that right now, but you can definitely grow violas or Johnny jump ups, and no one would have a problem with that. And you've got an incredibly useful medicine right at hand, useful for colds, useful for just all kinds of things, and also a tasty edible. And hey, maybe you can plant a basswood tree too. So y'all, I hope you enjoyed this one. I know we went a little far afield on a few things. I'm gonna have to cut it down to a reasonable length, but y'all have a great week. Stay curious and remember, question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Question your doctor, question your school board, question your tax collector, question your, I don't care who it is, question everything. Question yourself. Question me. Don't take anything. It says it right in the disclaimer. Don't believe anything I say unless you look it up and can prove it to yourself to be true. I make that claim because I'm not afraid of being questioned. You really do have to wonder why so many people are afraid of being questioned. So, all right, y'all, I'll see you next week. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.